So let's move on to survivor options. A little bit about survivor. What is it? You guys heard of survivor options? Are we feeling like we know what survivor options are, right? Okay, so briefly then, survivor options are just an opportunity for you to be able to continue your benefit onto a designated survivor. Most times that's a spouse, but it doesn't have to be a spouse, okay? So all it means is that you're going to take your benefit. We're going to take what we kind of expect. We don't have a specific number for you, but theoretically, there's a pool of money that's going to be dedicated to your retirement, and we're going to pay that out over your lifetime. That's one of the great features of defined benefit plans, is that we're going to pay you your benefit for your entire lifetime until you die, no matter how long that is, right? The survivor option allows you to take your benefit and not only pay it out over your lifetime, but then we're going to extend it and pay it over your survivor's lifetime. So now we're going to be paying that pool of money over 2 lifetimes. Now, to do that, theoretically, to keep the fund in good balance, we're taking that same theoretical pot of money and we're going to spread it out over 2 lifetimes. So that means the money going out has to shrink a little bit to be able to stretch it longer. That's the basic philosophy behind these. So there is what we call an actuarial reduction that goes into the calculation to determine how much you get reduced. The calculation is based on the differences in age between you and your survivor. The greater the age difference, the greater the reductions. Okay? Now, in Washington State, because of the community property laws, that if you are married, your spouse has to consent on your choice at retirement, and whether that's to use the survivor option, not use the survivor retirement option, your spouse has to consent. And if you don't get their consent, they're going to give you a survivor option, and we'll talk about it. They're going to give you option 3. So there's a default. Just be aware. That's one of those other tricks and tips. These can be, and the other thing, when you may, it's important to consider this carefully under your circumstances, because sometimes it may work for you, sometimes it may not. But the bottom line is, once you make this choice, you're pretty much stuck with it. There are some conditions where it changes, but those conditions are fairly limited. For the most part, you're going to just count on being set at the survivor option that you have picked. I will say, if your survivor predeceases you, we will pop your benefit up to a non-survivor type benefit. Your benefit will be popped up. That's one of those conditions where it will change. But there's only about 4 or 5 reasons it might change.
So if that happens, can you now add another survivor, like your kids or somebody else?
Not in that instance. The only way you could change that is there's an instance where if you get remarried, then you have basically a 2-year window where you can designate your new spouse as a survivor, or likewise, if you never picked a survivor option and then get married in retirement, you have a very short window to add that survivor. Or if you were to return back to active employment, your benefit stops, you're in service for 2 years, and then you re-retire. That's an entire new retirement process. You could name a new survivor at that point, and the old one's nullified. So, like I said, few unique kind of circumstances where this can happen. But again, that's a big decision, and I'll show you some of the financial implications here. It's one of those things where I said it's probably wise to talk to a consultant or talk with a financial planner or seriously consider the impact on your financial situation. I look at myself. My wife works for the state, so I know she has a defined benefit of her own. So I know she's going to have a retirement income stream for the rest of her life. So for us, that may not be the best decision for me to give her even more. She may not need that income. But at the same time, her family has incredible longevity, mine not so much. So then again, maybe I do want to pass that money on to her because I'm not going to be around to take it as long. There's a variety of different considerations you want to give. Maybe you don't have a spouse that has any pension, or you don't have a lot of retirement savings. So you want to look at how that fits in. Bud? So Bud's question is if I retire, I don't pick a survivor option, so my benefit's not going to continue, but I take 1 month of retirement, I get hit by the beer truck. Right? So at that point, I've maybe taken $4,000 out, and over my career, maybe I've put in $15,000 or $20,000. What happens? There is a provision, what I'll refer to as a repayment or balance payment, and so they're keeping track of how much you've taken out in benefits, and they're comparing that to your member contributions plus the interest that has accumulated. So if you have not taken out at least that much, that at the time you pass away, the balance between what you've received and what you contributed to the plan itself will be paid to your designated beneficiary. And that's different than your spouse necessarily. If you have a designated beneficiary, that can be anybody that you name, so it's important to have your beneficiary on file. If you don't have a beneficiary on file, then it goes down to a spouse, and if you don't have a spouse, it goes to minor children. If you don't have minor children, then it goes to your estate. So there's a progression of how that goes. But that's one of the cases where the beneficiary overrides a spouse in terms of benefit receipt.
Is there interest on that money that you've accumulated?
There is
It's not
interest.
dollar for dollar.
No, it's not by any close. In fact, it's quite nominal, really. It's like a I want to say it was like a 4% APR at most. So it's nominal. I mean, it's money, but it's not much better than a savings account in reality. So, and it's only the member money. You don't have any entitlement to the employer money whatsoever. All right, so there are 4 options when we talk about survivor options. There's option 1, 2, 3, and 4. So there's the single life benefit, which has no reduction. That's, well, you also hear that as the base calculation, the standard retirement, normal retirement. That's the calculation we just looked at. That is just the straightforward, here is my benefit. If you select option 1, that means is that I'm going to get the highest level of benefit you can get, but when I die, I'm going to get it for every month for my life, but when I die, benefits stop. They don't continue on to anybody else other than, say, for the repayment process. The survivor options, then 2, 3, and 4, all operate the same, they're just varying levels. And what this means, so option 2 is joint and 100% survivor. This is going to have the largest reduction off your base benefit, off that option 1 benefit, but when you die, your survivor is going to get the exact same amount you were receiving. So it gives the biggest benefit to your survivor. Option 3 is joint 50%, and just like you would expect now, you're going to have a smaller reduction. In fact, it's the smallest reduction on the options, but when you die, your survivor is going to get 50% of what you were receiving. And option 4 just splits the difference, and it's the same function, middle of the road reduction in regards to 50 and 100, but they're only going to get 2/3 of what you're receiving. So it has implications on how much income is being returned based on what option that you select. So as you can see, this is why in this state they say, hey, your spouse has to sign off, because there's a lot of folks who may say, I want option 1, and your spouse is going, no, you're not. Right? So that's cool. Now, I always get the question, and I kind of hesitate to put it out there because I don't want to scare anybody, but I always say, well, what's the most popular option? What do you guys think is probably the most popular option? 4, really interesting. Well, in fact, now option 4, to be fair, didn't actually come into existence until the 90s. The other 3 options were in place, so it's a little bit behind the curve. In fact, the most popular option, or the most often used option, is option 1. Out of all the retirees, I think it's 3,710 retirees based on my last data, 43% selected option 1. 33% selected option 2. And then I think it's 13 and 11% respectively chose option 3 and option 4. So people do use all 4 options, but the majority have selected option 1 or option 2. I honestly don't know what necessarily drives that. I hope it's careful consideration for their financial situation, but I would encourage you to look at all the different options to find out what works best for your situation. Oh, and by the way, I said, if you don't select a survivor option and you don't have spousal consent, they will give you option 3, which is the joint and 50% survivor. So let's make sure you understand how the math works on this. So here's your base benefit, which is the option 1 benefit, right? We've already seen this one. This is your maximum benefit. When we start, how we calculate the survivor options is that there's an actuarial factor. One of the tables that you had, or that was in the back, called the survivor benefit. This is our actuarial table. These are the figures that we use for calculating what the impact on the benefit's going to be. In this case, I'm assuming retirement at 57, my spouse is the same age, which is going to have the smallest possible reduction in terms of survivor option. So for the joint and 100%, there's my actuarial factor. And on this table, I'm going to find left plan 2, and I'm going to go down to the difference in age. Whoopsie, survivor benefit. Did I use the wrong factor? I may have used the wrong factor, 871. I may have used the wrong factor. Plan 2 option. Oh, there it is. Yeah. So I'm sorry. So for plan 2, for 0 agent difference, 0.871, that's my factor. All I do is I add that into the computation. So what that's really saying is that you can look at it either I'm getting 87% of my benefit or I'm taking a 13% reduction. Now these aren't linear by any means. That's why you can see there's a very extensive table involved. So knowing that math, how does that, people want to know, well, how does it vary across the options? Well, I did the math for you. So you can see on that we've got our option 1 benefit. Here's our standard benefit. Here's that option 2 that we looked at. Again, you can see it's the largest reduction, almost $500. But you can see the member benefit and the survivor benefit are the same when they continue versus option 3 and option 4. At 50%, the smallest reduction, but only half the benefit continues. And then the middle of the road reduction, 2/3 of the benefit. But as you can see, those are real numbers. Those are fairly significant numbers in most income situations. So it's important to understand what the impact is based on the computation you select. So any questions on how that goes into play or about those options? Very good. So does it really make a difference, the age gap? Well, yeah, it does. It's not linear, as I said. So I went to a 5-year comparison. You see the impact on that option 2 benefit, about another $100 in reduction. So yes, it has an impact. The greater the age difference, the more the impact. But it's not linear. It's not going to be a 200 reduction if you go to 10 years. It's an exponential type. So you got to go to the correct factor. But it does make a difference if there's an age gap. This is where getting an estimate from the retirement systems is very important because they will automatically calculate out for you all the different options. You don't have to do the math. It's helpful to understand how the math works, and you can calculate it on your own if you want to, but you don't have to. You can get information from the Department of Retirement Systems at least 3 times, but you can go to the department and they can help you. They can give you all the numbers that you want to see, and they're useful to have that information, even if you're not even within a couple of years of retirement. It's still good to have it to have a sense of where your numbers lie so you can look at your financial planning down the road. So here's one of my tips and tricks. If you're taking a survivor option, you will have to provide proof of your survivor's age. They're already going to have yours on file, but because the age difference makes the difference in the calculation, you have to provide proof of survivor's age. These are the documents that the department will accept. I make this a point because when I spoke with the plan administrator at the Department of Retirement Systems, this is one of the things that holds up people's retirement more often than not, is that they don't provide this information. They will not pay you until they have all the documents that they need and everything's signed and everything's in order. So if they don't have this document and it comes around to time to pay that benefit, they're not going to pay you until you provide this information. And more often than not, this is what's going to hold up your retirement. So anyway, so that's my tip on that. Make sure that you remember to do that when you're going through your retirement process. Particularly if you file online for retirement, you still have to submit a paper copy. You have to send in a copy of the retirement proof of age, which is where I think that disconnect throws people at times. So, all right, so almost done with that top row. We've got the basic benefit computation and the basic survivor option, which are important pieces to understand just how your base benefit's computed. So that's the window into terms of how much your base benefit, how much retirement income you're getting from your pension plan. That's a major chunk. Like I said, if you think about it, it's a 2% multiplier. If you have a 20-year career, that's 40% of your average salary. If you have a 30-year career, that's 60% of your salary. Typically, our plan returns on average about 57%. So most of the guys are getting, at least the older guys who are working longer, I expect that number will come down a little bit closer to 50%. As I said, right now, 24 years is kind of the average. So, that says we're putting about a 48% return, in terms of income that's being provided. So anyway, so it's a major part. It fits right in that window as far as that leg of the stool. Yeah, we expect it to be somewhere in that 40–50% of your income. Yeah. The question was, how do you actually get to what your net benefit is? I'm talking about gross benefit levels, and as I said, you're subject to income taxes. I said you might be subject to other deductions and other things. How do you get to what your actual take-home number is going to be? The department's not going to be able to advise you on that. I'm not going to be able to tell you that because it's going to depend on every individual based on when they retired, did they take a survivor option, what did they put on their W-4, how much is being deducted for income taxes. Are you taking money out to have your health care premiums paid directly out of your pension to be able to take advantage of the tax deduction for public safety officer benefits, which I'll try and circle back around to that. So the best thing I'm going to be able to advise is this is where a financial professional is going to come into play for you, because that's where we start to cross into their realm in terms of being able to help you get down to the net level of your total income solutions. So I wish I was more of a tax expert. Frankly, I'm not a tax expert. I'm a defined benefit pension expert itself. So you're going to have to find a tax advisor in that regard. Yeah, he's asking when you're getting your pension check, will they already automatically deduct income or retirement taxes or the income taxes? The answer is yes, and like I said, when you file for retirement, you actually submit a W-4, and based on that W-4, they will take income deductions and whatever other choices you've made. If you have other deductions, they will make those deductions out of that check. Now, if you don't file a W-4, the Department of Retirement Systems is obligated to take taxes out as at married with 3 deductions, and then it's up to you to straighten it out if that's the right amount or not, but it's strictly on you to figure out the correct deductions.
Another question too.
Yeah, so the question is can I have my healthcare premiums deducted straight out of my pension check? And in fact, there is an opportunity to do that. It's something that you'll have to talk with your healthcare provider or your insurance provider and the Department of Retirement Systems, but you can ask to have those deductions made. Now, the healthcare company will have to approve, saying, yeah, we will accept that money from the department. And it's an advantage to do that because there are some federal laws that allows that if you're having your health care premiums paid directly from your pension, so it never goes through your hands, goes directly to the provider, that you will be able to deduct up to $3,000 worth of those directly paid health care premiums. You can deduct $3,000 from your income for your tax calculation purposes. There was a handout on that back table about that. That's actually, it's a federal provision that came from the Pension Protection Act in 2006, and then we passed the appropriate state laws to allow you to take advantage of that opportunity. So it's definitely something to look into as you get into retirement. And that's one of those deductions. I'm saying if you're taking that deduction, that is going to have it's going to impact that overall income tax position. So there's a lot of things that can go into calculating that bottom number. So I already lost. So purchasing additional benefits. So let's talk about it. There actually are 2 different ways to purchase additional benefits. There's the annuity purchase, which is the thing most people are talking about. That's the newer one. That actually got passed back in 2014 and has really just gone into service fairly recently. But prior to that, you actually could buy what was called airtime. It was a service credit purchase. And we were able to get that law passed in 2005. Federal law allowed us to do that, but not the annuity. In 2012, federal law changed, and we were able to take advantage of doing an annuity directly out of the pension fund. Now, people say, well, is this a benefit to me? Well, yes, it's a benefit. Not so much in terms of it's giving you additional benefit, like it's not creating new wealth for you. Really what these were designed as is a financial planning tool, right? So the person that I talked to about these is, what we learned is that you get your pension, but then you all have like deferred comp plans, you have the big account balances, and there's a lot of folks that go, I don't know what to do with this. I've got $250,000 sitting over there, and I'm not comfortable figuring out how to pay myself so that I don't take it too soon or let it go too long. I don't want to misuse it. I don't want to take the time to invest it. I don't want to monkey with it, right? So for that person, they have an opportunity to take that lump sum money and create a payment stream out of the pension fund that looks exactly like your pension. So all of a sudden you've traded market growth and market risk on the investment side in like a 457 account for a guaranteed stream of income that looks just like your pension, which means it's going to pay out for your entire lifetime and have all the features of your pension. That's the fundamental trade-off. So if you're a person who doesn't want to monkey with how to pay out this money, doesn't mind having that as a fixed income stream rather than maybe having the flexibility of having a pool of money that I can take money as I need. So there's trade-offs, but if that trade-off works for you to have that guaranteed stream, then these tools are a good way to look. The reason these are better, because you can go out through your deferred comp plan, you can buy an annuity through them. But here's the difference. This annuity out of the pension fund is going to be a better deal. And the reason is when you're dealing with MetLife or one of these other companies, they've got marketing expenses, they have administrative expenses, they have profit concerns. That means you're going to get less for your money. We don't have any of that concern. We're not making money off this. We're not trying to make money off this. These are cost neutral to the plan itself. We're just trying to give you a tool. So you're going to get more for your dollar. If you buy $200,000 annuity with our plan versus a private plan, you're going to get more per month out of this plan than their plan. That's bottom line. We've looked at the numbers, we've done the estimates. You're going to save money using this as a tool if you're inclined to use this kind of financial tool. What's the risk of a private annuity versus this annuity is the real question. And as far as if you buy this annuity, you are getting this a guaranteed stream, and it's backed by the pension plan itself, which means it's using the assumptions that are built into our pension plan, our return assumptions. You have the backing of the entire plan itself. So the chance that that stream is going to be at risk, if it has major market swings, this annuity is not going to have any risk, any problems. You're going to pay less for this annuity versus that annuity, but I guess from a risk standpoint, if you're going to use an annuity versus not using an annuity, again, you're losing, possible upside, because if you have a major market swing, you might actually you could beat the annuity. I mean, I'm not saying you can't. You could, if you're an active investor, you might be able to make more money than what this annuity paid out is. So, I mean, that's kind of a risk. But that means we know by the numbers, guys aren't good about it. Generally speaking, people don't beat the market.
As we get older, we want to go to more conservative investments because we want to protect that money. And we've had many financial advisors look at this option for an annuity or buying service credit, and you can't beat it, mainly because of the fees associated with it. And Tim's going to talk about the COLA. And you could go out and buy an annuity with a MetLife or some other large insurance company that's a AAA rated or A+ rated, and it's going to be secure. You're never going to lose it. But they don't probably offer COLAs, right, which is a big thing. And we use an actuarial assumed rate of return of 7.5%. So when we discount what you're buying it for, you're buying it with a future cash stream at 7.5%. And there aren't many annuities out that pay 7.5%. So this really is a good deal.
I'm just skeptical because it almost seems too good to be true, because at the end of the day, how does the state make money?
Well, the state's not in it to make any money. Well, I guess they would make in excess of the actuarial returns. That 7.5%, last year they made 11%. They keep that. But you're protected in the downturn because it's guaranteed by the state and the $110 billion that sits in the state investment board.
Is there any risk, Greg, of somebody changing that through legislative action? Can they touch that piece of it? Because I know they could change their pension if they really wanted.
There's a thing called a Bachenhouse ruling, which was this guy Bachenhouse who sued the state many years ago. And basically it says once a benefit's established, they can't take it away from you. They could do it prospectively. They could change the legislation for stopping it starting in 2018.
But they can't take it away.
Once you have it, it's yours.
Yeah. Yeah, but to that point, as far as like I said, the state isn't making money. It wasn't designed to make money. It was designed to be cost neutral to the plan. We're not making money. We're not losing money, and it's again the game averages. We're not losing money on it. We're not making money on it. It's designed strictly as a financial tool to provide advantage for you, the maximum advantage for you.
Just take out of it what it costs to run.
That's exactly right. That's all we're looking to make sure is that we're just running it so it's not costing the plan. Which is why a lot of the providers don't like it, because they can't beat our program and they know it. Yeah, so the question is, if I've got my pool of money in my deferred comp, can I just take that money and put it in and not have any negative consequences from that? And the short answer is yes, that's exactly what it's for, is you can roll that money in to the pension fund, and we're going to give you a guaranteed stream of money as part of your pension benefit. So first, let's talk about how these things are basically calculated. Now again, I want you to understand the fundamentals of the math, and because a lot of questions around that. You're not necessarily going to have to calculate it on your own if you want to. You can there's calculators on the Department of Retirement Systems website. You can get estimates, but the math is pretty easy, so it's easy to play with. And I've given you copies of the tables if you want to do some of the math. So let me show you fundamentally how they work. I'll show you how both work. I'm going to show you that they're mathematically equivalent, because a lot of people say, should I take an annuity or should I use the service credit purchase? Mathematically, it doesn't matter. There's a couple of differences I'll talk about that may sway which one you use. Mathematically, though, dollar for dollar on the benefit side, they're exactly the same. So first, the annuity calculation, which is probably the more commonly used tool. The basic math is that you just have to multiply the amount you want to purchase, whatever that account balance is you want to use. You're going to multiply it by a factor, which again is one of these tables which says purchasing service credit or annuity. You'll have to find the appropriate factor on this table. Now in this case, I know that for an age 57 retiree, and again, one of the important points I overlooked, you can only do this at the time of retirement. You get one shot at doing this. You can't do it before, you can't do it after. You have to do it at the time you're filing for your retirement. So you have to do all your decision making before you get to the point where you're filing your retirement application, because that's your one shot to do it. If you get a year into retirement and say, Matt, you know, now I want to put that money in, can't do it. You get one shot. Period. Now, there are some retirees right now that have a window to do it. That only has to do with when the law was created. There were guys that had retired and never had the opportunity. We went back and gave them a limited opportunity, but that's not going to ever happen again. So you get one shot at the time of retirement. So I'm going to take my age 57 retiree. I'm going to look up the factor for left 2, retiring at age 57, and I know that factor is 0.0052072. All I have to do is calculate my purchase amount times that factor, and that's going to tell me how much benefit I'm going to get every month for the rest of my life based on a $200,000 purchase, and that's $1,041. So if I took my assumed my average benefit and added that $1,000, my new benefit's a little over $4,800. I'm going to get that for the rest of my life until the point that I die. Now I've done the math, and no matter what you're buying, at any age, the break-even point is almost always going to be right around 16 years, sometimes a little bit less, 15 point something. It's almost always 16 years every time I've done the math. I think I've got to 14 years once, but it's almost always right around 16 years. So that means if I put in $200,000 and I take it out $1,000 at a whack, that means in 16 years I'm going to have recovered my initial investment, which is going to be about, in this case, 57 plus 16, I'm going to be at 73. So once I get to 73, what happens? Well, the benefit doesn't stop. I said I'm going to pay you for your lifetime. So if you continue to live, so to speak, you're getting free money at that point. You beat the actuarial table. Now, not everybody's going to beat the actuarial table, and that benefit may stop depending on whether or not they selected a survivor option, which I'll circle back around to in a moment. But the bottom line is you're talking about a 16-year bet in terms of recovering that initial investment. You can use any amount that you want to, but minimum purchase is $25,000. On the annuity, there is no maximum amount. So as much as you have in your account, you can roll that over. The question is, could that affect your tax income bracket if all of a sudden, depending on how you use this income? The answer is yes, there is potential tax consequences. But again, this is where it comes into using your financial advisors, including tax advisors, to understand what the implications are going to be to your overall tax position, because there's a lot of different things you want to take into consideration on what your tax strategy is in retirement. So there could be consequences, yes, and that's why you need to consult with your advisor. Briefly, I showed you physically what the table is, but as I was looking it up, this is what the table looks like. It's on the Department of Retirement Systems website if you look up administrative factors. And again, you just go to the left 2 column for the age at retirement, and that's going to give you that factor. So whether you're doing it at 53, 55, you can just take the appropriate factor, multiply it times the amount you're considering to buy, and it's going to tell you how much your benefit's going to be increased. Part of your bigger financial plan should include your estate planning. Do you have kids that you want to leave money to? Do you want to leave money to them? How much do you want to leave to them? That may make the decision on whether or not you use this product as a tool versus the traditional philosophy of, no, I'm going to retire, I'm going to take out 4% per year, if that's your particular prescription. So that's why it's important to understand how it works and what it means, so you can make the appropriate decision for your circumstance, because what you want to do, what your resources are, what's going to drive what you are going to end up doing. The point is understanding it and knowing you have to make that decision by the time you get to retirement. So, and there's a lot of things to figure out about that. So again, looking at how that plays out across varying purchase levels, I put this in just because I get that question a lot. Well, how much am I going to get for $10,000? Or $25,000? How much am I going to get for $100,000? How much am I going to get for $200,000? For the age 57 retiree, This is just what the numbers currently look like. So you have some sense of scale with the added benefit. Again, it's all that same factor, but depending on how much you buy, has an impact on how much you do. And you could do part of your account balance. You don't have to do all of it, so it all depends on what your particular strategy is. The service credit purchase, mathematically it's going to be the same thing, it's just a little bit different formula. The way this one's derived is that you actually have to calculate, and what you're really doing is you're buying service, which isn't attached to any period of service. You can buy up to the equivalent of 5 years of service credit, which is called airtime, not attached to service. It can't help you qualify for benefits. It just strictly goes into a mathematical computation. So if I'm calculating my benefit on 20 years of service, now I'm calculating it on 25 years of service credit, assuming I buy the maximum of 5 years. So I'm going to have to calculate how much is the impact on my benefit. So in this case, because I wanted to use months rather than years, the 2% times the 60 month times 8,000 divided by 12 to put it onto a monthly figure means I'm going to add $800 a month to my benefit if I buy 5 years of service credit. That's what this 60 months is. I'm saying I want to buy 60 months. It's the same thing if I just plugged 5 in there instead of dividing by 12. I would have got to $800 per month. So you just take in the basic math formula, you just plug in the new years of service credit with the rest of your criteria. So I'm adding $800 in benefit to my account. So to determine how much I have to pay for that additional benefit, instead of multiplying, I'm going to divide the added benefit by the same factor. Same factor, which tells me the cost is going to be $153,633 to buy 5 years of service credit. So mathematical equivalency, remember in our basics in terms of math and transitive properties, that if I buy an annuity, if I say I'm going to roll over $153,633 and buy an annuity because that's my account balance, what I have to do is I have to multiply it by my factor, and it's going to tell me I'm going to add $800 per month onto my benefit. So as I can see, they use the same factors. Mathematically, dollar for dollar in terms of the benefit provided, the service credit purchase and the annuity are exactly the same. Okay? The math side doesn't make one more favorable than the other. Again, I just rolled out the numbers so that you can kind of get an impact. 10 months. What does 10 months cost me versus 60 months? Gives you an idea of just the scale of the numbers. So let's get to those frequently asked questions. As you saw, they are frequently asked questions. Maybe I should have started with that piece there. But so some differences. There's some fund source differences. The annuity, you can only use a rollover from a governmental plan to buy an annuity. So it has to come from your 457, a 403B, a 401k or 401a from another municipality. Has to be a governmental source. You can't take private funds to buy an annuity. Whereas the service credit purchase can come from any fund source. If you got an inheritance, you can use that money to buy your purchase. They can come from any source you want, including rollovers of those. On annuity, you have to buy a minimum of a $25,000 annuity. In service credit, you can only buy in whole month increments, but you're limited at 5 years of purchase, which you already saw. That means you're capped at about a little over 150,000, assuming an age 57 retirement. Most of you, or a lot of you, are going to have account balances bigger than that and may want to take advantage. At least that's the feedback we've gotten, which is why the annuity is an advantage. You could choose to take on both because maybe you have an inheritance you want to use this for. You can buy service credit purchase with that, and then you can use an annuity for the rest of it, because you can't buy an annuity with an inheritance. So you can take advantage of both depending on your fund sources. But the fund source is a difference. There are a couple of limitations in terms of what, how much you can buy from each. And then the suspension piece. When you get this payment, it's going to be basically, you're going to get one check from the department. It's going to look like one check. You get your pension, and then your new annuity or service credit value. It's going to be one check. It's going to look indistinguishable. The benefits are indistinguishable because they are subject to survivor option, and it does have a cost of living adjustment. So if you pick a survivor option for your benefit, that same survivor option will be applied to your annuity or purchase credit. You cannot use a different survivor option for the different pieces. It's, for all intents and purposes, looks like one benefit. So it's going to use the same survivor option, but it will have a cost of living adjustment, the same exact application as your pension. We'll talk about that for a moment. The question is, why is there a service credit and an annuity if they're more or less the same? What happened we started looking at this back in 2005, and when we investigated, we looked at both purchasing airtime and trying to do an annuity. At the time the board looked at that, federal law allowed us to offer airtime. It did not allow a governmental pension fund, did not provide the authorization in federal trust fund law. We weren't allowed to do annuities out of the fund. So we said, well, let's take what we can get, and we passed the service credit bill to give you a tool. Fast forward to 7 years later, 2012, new change in federal law, and they said, okay, now it is okay to do an annuity out of federal trust fund. So we said, hey, that was our preference to begin with because there's a little bit more breadth to it. There isn't the cap of the 5 years, which is a federal limitation. So we said, well, now that we can get annuity, let's go get the annuity. Let's pile on, if you will. So that's why there is a difference. Honestly, if we'd have been able to do annuity in 2005, we may never have passed the service credit provision. So that's really the only reason that there's two.
Tim, let me make sure I understand. You can only buy 5-year service credit max?
Correct. If you're using the service credit purchase, 5 years of service credit to the maximum.
Deferred comp, you've got money left over, you'd still be getting 2 checks, right? If you buy your 5 years, you still have money left in deferred comp.
Yeah. So yeah, let's say you decide and you only want to use that. So the question is, am I going to get multiple checks if I don't use my entire deferred comp money? And yeah, you may only roll over $150,000 out of your $200,000 benefit or $200,000 deferred comp balance. You're still going to have $50,000 in deferred comp. You're doing a partial rollover of your account balance. So yeah, you still have that other money. You're still going to get that money. So you may choose to, buy some of an annuity. Nothing that says you have to use your whole balance. It's just I might want 100,000. I might want 50,000. I just may want to augment. Again, this is where you have to look at your circumstance and what works for my situation and what are my income needs.
But you can only buy 5 years regardless of what money you use.
Correct. And that's where the annuity comes into play, because the annuity, there's no limit to the amount, but it has to come from your governmental source. So that's the balance point. And again, there was a question about, well, what happens if I buy in my annuity and then I die prematurely, so to speak. So as I already said, the same survivor option that applied to your pension applies in this case because we're sitting right on top of your pension. So that same amount, the same rules, whether you take 100%, 50%, or 2/3, that annuity in that same proportion is going to continue to your survivor. And then whether your survivor then dies or whether you die and didn't choose a survivor, again, the balance repayment piece is still in play. If you have not received the amount that you have put in, which includes if you put in $200,000, if you have not received $200,000 in benefits, then the balance to what you have not received is going to go to your beneficiary and or your estate if you don't have a beneficiary on play. So from that standpoint, you're never losing your initial investment. Not necessarily going to have any market gains on it, but you won't have had market risk, either market losses. So there's trade-offs there. But you will always get a balance repayment up to we'll call it your initial investment, so to speak.
That's a lump sum payout, right?
That normally is in a lump sum payment. And again, people are saying, well, which one should I buy? Why would I do this? Well, we've addressed that several times. There's a couple of, one, is it a tool you want to use? And then two, because the source limitations, the fund limitations, which one works better for you? Do I have an inheritance versus I have my governmental plan that I want to use? One of the other things, the suspension piece, there's one little weird little trick which may or may not come into play. If you come back to work, and we'll talk about this in return to working, or returning to work as a retiree. If I return back to a LEOFF employment, your pension's going to be stopped. That's just the rules. If that happens, now if you've bought the service credit purchase, because it's service credit calculation and it's actually buried inside the pension, all payments associated with that service credit purchase stop along with the pension. But if you buy an annuity, that is actually accounted for separately. It just sits on top of the pension, but it's not part of the pension. So if you come back to employment, your pension stops, The annuity payment will continue. You will receive that even while you're still working in another position. So that's one little difference. But there's not a lot of differences, but those are the couple of differences. There is a sheet in the back on this on annuity purchase, service credit purchase, that it talks about these differences. We also have a lot of information up on our website as well. So those are really the big areas of interest that are most common.